Following the mob at the Capitol last week, the FBI is now warning of more violent action by pro-Trump extremists. Now, before I get to the details on this story, let me first show you this graph that I've shared before, but it's important context in understanding that right-wing extremism didn't just start with Donald Trump, and that it existed well before he came to power. So you see here, looking at this info from the Center for Strategic and International Studies, percentage of terrorist attacks and plots by perpetrator orientation, 94 to 2020. You can see between 94 and last year, a major chunk of extremism is from the right wing. And you see 2016 onward, of course, it grew, especially in 2020. But even before then, right-wing extremism made up the majority of plots and attacks. And as they say here, between 1994 and 2020, there were 893 terrorist attacks and plots in the U.S. Overall, right-wing terrorists perpetrated the majority, 57% of all attacks and plots during this period. So, as always, on YouTube, I link to all this stuff below the video. You can read through this yourself. There's more data here as well to go over. But I show you this to give you the context that once Donald Trump is out, this is not going away. This right-wing extremism will continue with or without Donald Trump. And it's important at the same time to hold people like Donald Trump criminally accountable for their actions. Now, going on to what the FBI is saying here, as Common Dreams writes, quote, the FBI received information about an identified armed group intending to travel to Washington, D.C. on the 16th of January. They have warned that if Congress attempts to remove POTUS via the 25th Amendment, a huge uprising will occur. Now, this is just the first part of it. So based on the 25th Amendment, if Trump is removed, then apparently this uprising will happen in Washington, D.C. on January 16th. Now, it's very unlikely at this point, at least from everything I've seen so far, that Pence will move forward with that. So even though he should be removed, he's unlikely to be, though there is also the option there of impeachment, and Democrats are going to pass impeachment in the House. It's very unlikely that it'll go to the Senate before Trump's actually out of office. So even if Trump somehow can be convicted in the Senate, that wouldn't happen until after Trump is actually removed from office because he lost the election. But so I wondered, is the 25th Amendment really the end all be all here? If it doesn't happen, are they going to stand down? I tend to think, based on how these people operate, that they're going to try to do this regardless. But they go on here saying, according to ABC News, the FBI has also received information that an unnamed right-wing extremist group is calling for storming federal, state, and local courthouses and other government buildings in the event that Trump is removed from office before his term expires on January 20th. The group is also planning on invading government offices in every state, regardless of whether Trump or President-elect Joe Biden won it in the 2020 presidential election, the FBI memo said. So basically, what they're saying here is there will likely be violent action regardless of what happens, regardless of the 25th Amendment, regardless of if Trump is removed or not, regardless of who they think won the election. There is still going to be more action similar to what we saw on the Capitol last week with this massive Trump mob. So this is the kind of thing where, as I said, even though this isn't completely out of the blue in terms of the rise of right-wing extremism, they found their figurehead in Donald Trump, and they are going to the ends of the earth to fight for him, to try and, if not keep him in power, at the very least show their anger because of his removal from office. Now, I want to share this as well. So this came out December 21st, 2020. Aria Kovler here essentially predicted what happened at the Capitol last week. Now, this wasn't a prediction out of thin air. He based this on research he was doing, what he was seeing on pro-Trump message boards. But he said here on the 21st of December, on January 6th, armed Trumpist militias will be rallying in D.C. at Trump's orders. It's highly likely that they'll try to storm the Capitol after it certifies Joe Biden's win. I don't think this has sunk in yet. This guy knew, as did, to be fair, a lot of people who were paying attention to this at the time, which is why it is important to take the FBI seriously here. They don't just put memos out like this for no reason. I mean, they have real reason here to believe that this will happen. So it's important to be aware of just how far these lunatics will go. And in fact, when it comes to this story as well, on Kovler here, he was interviewed afterwards because of this prediction, and said he was surprised because he thought they would actually go further. As he said here in one of his last tweets, some think Trump will win because they will ensure it, maybe by forcing Congress to certify him as the winner at gunpoint, maybe as backup forces to Trump's supposed military coup. So this is something that very likely would have happened had this mob been able to enter the House, enter the Senate, while senators and Congress people were still there. So, I mean, every little detail about this story shows me this could have gone a lot worse than it actually did. Even though it was terrible, it could have gone a lot worse. You could have seen mass injury, mass casualties when it came to actual members of Congress. Now, one last thing here to show you that this did not come out of the blue. As Mother Jones writes, the phrase, quote, storm the Capitol was used 100,000 times online in the month leading up to the mob. So this was being discussed. There was fair warning ahead of time that this was going to happen. Local law enforcement were warned about this. Officials simply didn't act the way they should have in terms of preparing for this properly. As I discussed at the time when I covered this, imagine this was Black Lives Matter. Imagine this was Antifa. The reaction that you would have seen from law enforcement. So you saw the complete opposite when it came to this. And again, we're going to see if this warning from the FBI leads to some actual preparation here when it comes to ensuring that people are safe and that this violent action isn't able to be fulfilled on the day that they plan it, because of the warning here from the FBI telling these local law enforcement officials to be prepared about what is about to happen.